This is Kelly.
And this is Amy.
And you're listening to Diary of a Death Investigator, episode 13. Amy's not very happy with me because I'm making her re-record it. We're going to put this out hopefully next Friday, which is Friday the 13th. I've been traveling, so we usually record on Saturday or Sundays, but today's Monday. I have the Monday blues. Sorry, Amy, I'm a little behind today. I'm a little distracted.
Clearly.
We're calling this episode The Conjuring. Amy says it's a spooky movie, and this case reminded her of, I guess it's a series of movies.
It's a series of movies, and they're all very scary. I can attest to that.
Which I'm assuming then this episode is very scary as well.
Keeping it on par with the month.
So we do have a trigger warning for this episode. This story contains content about suicide, as well as graphic descriptions. If you or someone you know is in crisis, help is just 3 numbers away. 988 is the suicide and crisis hotline, available 24 hours, 7 days a week across the United States. And if you are listening in another country and have a number we can add to our list, please let us know. You can message us on Instagram or on the episode that you're listening to or on any of the platforms that you're listening to on as well. All right, Amy, we're ready for spooky season episode 2.
Okay. Well, I could not find the actual case file, so I'm pulling it from the old noggin. So I think this happened in 2020, and I can't remember where exactly it was. But this guy, I know he had a history of mental health issues, and we know that he did have some drug issues as well. All I was given at the time was that he had been found hanging in his room by his father. And he had been currently living with his father in his father's home. And he had been in and out of jail, but he was trying to get back on track. And the father was trying to help him. So living with the dad, trying to live clean and sober. Couple-hour drive for me. I get there. And small house, trying to think what the setup was kind of like in these houses. They weren't apartments. They were like condominiums.
Or like a duplex or something where there's 2 together.
Yeah, like duplexes. It was like a 2-bedroom home, small little living room up front. And the dad was sitting out front on the front porch with some other people. And I felt so bad that the dad was sitting out front and he was crying. And of course, I talked to him first and I told him that I was going to go in and take a look at the son and then I'd come back out and talk to him later. And that's usually how I started every time before I would go in and examine the body or bodies if the family was present on scene. And so when I walked in, the bedroom was down the hallway and it was the last bedroom there at the end of the short hallway. And the place just wasn't very well lit to begin with. The 2 bedrooms, they stood across the hall from each other and the doors were both shut. The officers had told me, they're like, you really can't open the door very well because he's still hanging behind the door. And so you kind of had to squeeze in through the door, which, gosh, I've probably been on, I wouldn't say hundreds of hangings, but I've been on quite a few hangings, not as much as I would say gunshot suicides, but hangings are a pretty frequent occurrence. But a lot of times when people find their loved ones hanging, a lot of times they will cut them down. I think that's just their reaction because they think that they can basically save them or attempt to resuscitate them whenever they find them in that way. The dad had left him in that way. So when we tried to open the door, there was about, I don't know, maybe a foot gap. So I had to kind of squeeze through the door and it was dark in the room.
Was the dad able to squeeze in through the door or was he able to just poke his head in and he saw and then he called 911?
No, he wasn't able to fit through the door. It was too small of a gap. And the guy wasn't very big, but when someone is suspended like that and the door is kind of jammed like that, it's not like you can keep pushing your way through and a whole body is kind of jammed up.
Oh, is that why the door wouldn't open? Because the body's jammed up against it?
Yeah. you'll figure out why here in a second. In the way that the body was suspended. Yeah, he wasn't able to open the body so far because there wasn't really much suspension there from what he was hanging from. Like I said, the hallway was dark and then the room was dark as well. And so the officers had turned on their flashlights so I could kind of see as I was walking in through the doorway. And it's always very startling when you walk in and you just kind of see like an outline of someone just hanging. It would always startle me, even when you know what you're walking into, like just seeing that shadow or that outline there, it will still startle you. So once I was able to squeeze in there, the cops were small enough they could also squeeze in there. And then we were able to get a light on. So right behind the doorway, there was the attic door. You know where like the ladder comes down out of an attic?
Yeah.
Would that be like the door, the attic door?
Yeah. Like it's a access door.
Yeah, the access door. So what he had done was he had taken, I think it was a belt, and had tied it off through the ladder suspension in the top, and he had looped it off up there. And then he had, of course, used the loop through the D-ring, and that's what he had actually looped around his neck. So there was maybe about 6 inches between like the ceiling and where his head actually was.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there wasn't a lot of room. So that's why like the dad wasn't able to actually push through the door because there just wasn't much give between his head and the ceiling. I think I've said before, I've talked about hangings before. There's this whole process that you go through when you do hangings. You have to do your measurements because there's always that chance that you could have someone to stage a hanging, even though it's really hard to do because it's really hard to suspend someone in that way. But there's always that like 1% chance, right? So you have to take your measurements from the floor all the way up to like the base of where the actual ligature is tied off at. And then you go from the floor to where the ligature is at the base of the neck. And then you go from the neck where the ligature is up to where it's tied off at. And of course, we always bag the hands on any type of suicide because we want to preserve any evidence. And then when we cut the ligature before we try to release them, we always want to cut in the middle of that ligature because we try to preserve any type of knots because there can always be evidence in that knot. So any hairs or fibers, anything like that. We also want to preserve that ligature around the neck as well. And then you take pictures of the ligature around the neck to see if there could possibly be any bruising around the neck or anything that would be considered foul play. So could there be strangulation marks or any like type of fingernail marks looking like maybe they could be like trying to grip at their throat, trying to pull that ligature away. But there wasn't anything either around there that looked like it could have been out of place. We just do that as precaution. We ended up cutting through the middle. And also, though, something else we have to be careful of is when someone is still suspended in that angle, you have to make sure that you are kind of supporting them as you're cutting them down because you don't want them just to drop down because that's a long fall. So you have to kind of steady them as they're going down.
And how many people does that take? Because that's dead weight.
It's dependent upon how big that person is. Usually you can do it with 2 people. A lot of times what we would do, we would just set up the body bag underneath them and then we would just cut it. And then literally we would just stand up at their shoulders and we would just slowly lower them down. I've had that happen before where it was in a garage and we would just get the cot right up underneath them and we would just set them up right under the cot and lift the cot up high enough to where it was a really easy drop down to the cot. But of course, we couldn't get the cot into the room because we couldn't get the door open wide enough. But all in saying this, I think we've said before, we look for all of these things in hanging cases where it's the petechia, where it's the bursting of the blood vessels or the capillaries under the skin and in the eyes and the protruding of the tongue and the purpling of the face. All these things that are significant to our doctors. But the things that were out of place that makes this the weirdest case were all of the crosses that were in this room. And I don't mean just the random crucifixes, but he had taken a pencil and had drawn a cross on every single corner of the room. So literally on like every single door frame, on every corner, there was a cross drawn, literally every corner of like a drawer or, on a dresser or something. And then we were searching his pockets. He had a crucifix in his front right jean pocket, and in his upper left shirt pocket, he had one of those small New Testament Bibles, like one of those ones that you see people handing out.
Yeah, they're usually like orange or something, a bright color usually.
Mm-hmm. He had one of those in his pockets too. I'm like, what is all this about? The cops had said when they were talking to the dad earlier that he had been seeing the devil recently. He had been paranoid.
So how big were the crosses in the corners? Because I'm thinking pretty significant for you to be able to see in every corner, unless you started adjusting to every corner as you were looking around the room.
No, I would say they were about an inch tall.
Oh, so not big.
No, but he was literally drawing them on every single corner. But they were just confined to his room. They weren't anywhere else in the house, just in his room.
Did the dad say that he only saw the devil in his room, or did he say where he was seeing the devil at?
Mm-mm. I guess it had been progressively getting worse over like the 2 weeks prior to him leading up to like his suicide. He had been getting paranoid. That's when he started carrying around the cross in his pocket and the Bible in his pocket too, which I had seen cases of paranoid people in the past where I've had people that will barricade themselves inside their homes, where they'll use knives to jam their doors shut, where they like put the knives into like their door jams.
What does that do?
It'd be like using a nail to like board up your door.
Oh, okay. It doesn't like alert you, right? So it doesn't drop like when someone comes in.
They had like multiple knives. And some people, like I had one, there was like a house fire. This guy had a heater and he like ended up burning himself up because he like boarded himself up in his home. So he ended up dying.
It's a bad way to go.
Literally, this guy had been seeing the devil. It had gotten so bad that he had been carrying like his crosses around everywhere and drawing crosses on everything. The dad said he had been using meth.
Did he start using meth again? Is that why he had been seeing the devil? Or was he detoxing maybe, and that's why he was seeing the devil?
So he had been detoxing. So this is why he had been seeing the devil. And that's typically what happens when people are detoxing.
Not that they see the devil, but that they see something.
Yeah, they become paranoid. They have hallucinations. But I can tell you, like, when I went into that room, I just did not feel good about being in there. I felt really creeped out. I didn't want to be there.
Did you have the same feeling in that room that you had when you were in the room with the guy with the fangs?
Yes, it was similar to that kind of effect. And especially, I don't know, when people kind of tell you this is what they were seeing prior, you just kind of get like that ick feeling too. You're just like, oh, that's not good. I don't want that to follow me around, like that aura kind of feeling.
Yeah. Like clean your body off. You're going to have your own crosses on you.
I don't know. My chakra fell off.
I remember when you first told me about this case, again, we were playing Fortnite.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the ones. And you're like, oh, yeah, this guy had drawn crosses all over his room. And I had jokingly said, like, was he doing meth? And I love that I just assume it's always meth because I know nothing about drugs, but it has to be something powerful to have this kind of chemical reaction, right, in your body.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll just go ahead and tell you about this other case. This woman, this wasn't my case, but I went on this scene with this investigator. And this woman, which we know that she went to trial and she was charged for this murder.
Do we need another trigger warning in this?
No, we've already covered that.
Okay, just checking.
On this morning, this woman said she was taking a shower. Her daughter comes in and the daughter growls at her, saying that she's Satan. So she begins to worry. She's saying she's very religious. I think they said they were Catholic.
And is the daughter young or old?
She was in her 20s. When she gets out of the shower, she keeps saying that the daughter is saying that she's Satan and that she was acting weird. She was growling, doing all these weird things. So then the mom feels that it is within her power to become an exorcist and takes the crucifix off the wall. And it's fairly big. How big would I describe this to be?
All right,
like
so you're showing it like a foot and a half. Yeah.
Foot and a half?
Foot and a half.
Yeah. She begins to beat her with the crucifix and continues to beat her so bad that she becomes unconscious. And this girl is her daughter, then lays her body out in the living room into
a cross?
Yeah, lays her out like Jesus, pretty much, like on a cross.
Yeah. Like a crucifixion.
Yes. And then like the daughter still isn't dead.
Oh.
Keeps beating her.
No one else is home?
The girl's boyfriend was there.
And he didn't do anything?
No.
What?
So the mom still thinks the devil's still within her. So then she takes a rosary.
The ones that you wear around your neck, right?
Mm-hmm. And it was a metal one. So she then shoves it so far down the girl's throat that the rosary is like protruding out of her neck. It's about C4, C5 down the middle of her throat.
What is she shoving it down there with?
Her hand.
And the girl doesn't bite her hand or anything?
No, she's like unconscious.
I guess that's the confusing part to me. She never fought back, so the mom must have gotten one good hit when she wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, it was a big crucifix. Big wooden crucifix.
Well, I'm just saying, she must not have seen it coming, right? Otherwise, you would think you put your hands up or something. So the girl must have had her back turned to her, and then her mom just must have knocked her upside the head. Enough for her not to scream or anything, for the boyfriend not to come out?
Well, I don't remember exactly what the boyfriend's story was.
Lots of questions on this one, Amy. We're going to have to Google this if you remember. Otherwise, I'm going to have to Google this one too.
Well, I remember seeing like her booking photo and she just looked like pure evil. She's smiling in her booking photo.
What?
The mom is. Yeah. So if you don't think that's the devil, I don't know what is.
Ooh.
But I remember this poor girl seeing her autopsy. Oh my gosh, because I had to collect evidence on it. I remember like going up and looking at her neck and just seeing that cross like coming through her throat and just being like, how could you have that much anger? You have to be possessed to do that to your own daughter. And the bruises, she was purple. She was just covered head to toe in bruises.
So when they found her, she was just still laying in the crucifix position?
Yep. It looked like a horror movie.
Hopefully we can get some answers on this one because I want to know if this lady's still in jail. What year was that? Do you remember?
Oh, I was pretty new. 2016 or 17, around that range. Her picture, oh my gosh, I remember looking at her booking picture. I'm like, she's smiling.
And the boyfriend had nothing to do with it?
I don't remember what ended up happening to him. He had to have been charged on something because he was there.
Unless he locked himself in, called 911. But, I mean, 20-year-old boy, I'm just assuming he's in his 20s if she was in her 20s. So I just assumed that he was big enough to take on a mom.
I mean, if she's the devil.
I mean, yeah. Was there a bunch of crosses in their house?
Yeah.
Huh. Be wary of the houses with a bunch of crosses in them.
If anything, that's probably the last thing I'd want to be beaten with. I mean, there's pointy corners on that. And
Yeah,
seeing that rosary shoved down her throat.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Well, I know that you were going to save that for next week and you were going to be more detailed on it.
I thought it was a good addition to the devil.
That is a good addition. Those are really scary. I don't think I've ever heard of any of the cases like that out here, but maybe I just tend to ignore those ones.
Ignorance is bliss, Kelly.
I know. That's why I don't watch scary movies.
Ask Dad. I've heard there's some devils down in Louisiana. You just gotta go looking in the right place. There's some creepy juju down there.
Maybe we bring him on. We've been talking about doing something for Christmas where we have Mamma Mia on. So maybe
I don't want to do.
Maybe he'll come in on an episode too.
We'll have to tempt him with some good chocolate.
Oh, I got that coming. Don't worry. I still have not been down to my storage unit. Maybe I'm putting that off too because I'm a little scared to go down the hallway. It's scary. Also, I've been carrying this stuff around in my car for what now, 2 weeks? It's still in my car.
We all do that. That's like the Goodwill pile that you keep in your car forever. Everyone has good intentions about it. They just don't ever go through with it.
Yeah. Well, so I have been out of town for a week. So hopefully I can go and take that before I'm going to need the room in my car. I have no room. Even the dog is like, I have him squished in the back next to all of it. And he's just staring at the pile. He's shaming me into going down.
He's along for a good ride.
Yeah. If we're not doing that next week, maybe we do a 2-parter for the Green River Killer.
I'm sure I can find something. I don't think people believe. I have thousands of cases. I'm just going to have to take a picture and show you like all the cases that I have. That's why like I lose cases. So I'm like, I don't know. I probably put stuff into the wrong file. There's so many of them.
We have 2 more. So Amy's going to come up with a spooky, scary, or maybe we do a 2-parter on the Green River Killer. So if you guys do have questions about the Green River Killer, like I said, look them up. I'm really excited to hear what you have about him because I've listened to a few podcasts. There is a podcast out there. He has like a 6-part series.
6?
On him. Yeah, like he has a lot of information on him.
How do you have that much to say?
I'm really sorry if you guys like him. I do like him. I thought he was really good. He kind of sounds like Dracula. So I can't remember what it is. I think he might be Norwegian, maybe. Not that all Norwegians sound like Dracula. You know what I'm talking about? That big voice and it's like really animated.
Like booming?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But I listened to him for 5 hours straight to listen to, I know.
Okay.
Like I said, I have some questions about him. And I think the interesting thing is that Ted Bundy also helped catch him. So that's a cool twist to that.
Takes a killer to catch a killer.
I think that might be a show.
Everyone wants to be a true crime specialist now.
Well, you're helping them be one. You're giving them all the deets on how to do.
You're welcome.
Shout out to Amy's students who are listening. Thank you guys.
My future criminalists.
Hopefully you're learning a little bit about forensics in the process. Anyway, guys, until next time, thank you for listening and we'll see you soon.
Bye.